Welcome once again to the decline of wrestling civilization here on LuchaCentral.com. Joining me once again, the Lucha specialist, the cult icon, Eric Mutter with the Quebec Nordiques toque, the embarrassment of Canada. What's going on?
Stop it. Then the embarrassment of, wow.
They left Quebec City to go to Colorado. Come on.
Oh, man. Don't even bring that up with me. I'm in no mood. The power just went out here. I'm scared. I'm trembling here. Ugh. I'm good otherwise. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I am Joe Martel here in Canada, the actual Canada, not fake Quebec, Canada. Well, no, I come from.
Wow.
I can't call that fake. But I moved away from there for legit reasons. So
the beginning of this video is going to appear on YouTube in a few days. Joe Martel shoots hard on Quebec.
It's odd because I think a lot of my hatred for where I grew up started from being a hockey fan. And in fact, I'm seeing a lot of recent Facebook stuff about being the anniversary of the trade where Patrick Roy was traded to Colorado.
Oh, wow.
From Montreal. I don't know if it was 25 years ago this week or something along those lines.
We talked about that last week too, off air. Yeah.
So a lot of that came up and it just made me realize I was so angry politically. You know, I'm a teenager at the time when this but I was hating the French politics, ruining hockey for me. And then as I grew up and understood how politics affected me more personally and directly, I'm very happy not being there anymore. I don't think politically I'll never be happy anywhere because everything seems to be awful in some way, but I'm away from Quebec and I'm happy about it.
There you go. Well, I picked this hat out and I'm sorry for traumatizing you yet again.
Offending me on so many levels. And here I tried to be polite with you and get like an X-Files shirt for you, but
wow.
You want to offend me with your Nordiques hat.
Wow. Duchovny, that's my guy right there.
He's on there somewhere. Oh, he's a little lower down. That's top. There's
I hear he'll be appearing on Dynamite with Shaq and Sting next week.
Okay. Let's go with that. First off, let's talk about how Shaq has been rumored to be on WWE for years. They want to have that big match with Big Show. It's never happened, and at least from what I've paid attention to, that nobody really cared. It'd be another cool moment, sort of like Kane against Khali. Like, sure, it's a spectacle, but no one's going to tune in to watch that. And now it's years later. Shaq is even less mobile than he ever has been, and he's going to be on AEW. Granted, he's got a personality. That's one thing you got to say. Shaq, you put a mic on him. I'm not saying he's going to be the most fascinating person, but he's not a boring slob. He can talk. But I fail to see what he's going to contribute to AEW. Could you fill me in what I'm missing there?
I'm guessing he's just going to contribute, being a name. I don't know. I can't really tell you right there. I think it's probably a better deal for them than, say, Mike Tyson, because it's going to cost them less money to bring Shaq in than Mike Tyson. They have the TNT connection because obviously Shaq works for TNT with Inside the NBA.
Right.
They can promote the show on Inside the NBA and their NBA telecast, so that's a net positive. He's probably going to be in the ring with Cody. Cody is very good with these types of matches. That's the best argument I can give you. I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see.
I'm going to give AEW credit here because even though I don't follow it and I still haven't watched what was the biggest episode of Dynamite of all time, I do respect the fact that they're doing something to try to create an audience. I don't know if Shaq is the way to go, but at least I understand that's what they're trying to do. To me, it feels like a swing and a miss, but it hasn't happened yet, so I really don't feel like it's fair for me to judge. It just seems like a very odd decision. I again keep coming back. I think a big problem that I'll have with AEW is what they tried to present as their alternative when they announced to what they actually deliver is so vastly different. Now, that could be my expectation and my issue to deal with, but I do find it problematic that it started out with them being a sports-based reality type wrestling show and not sports entertainment, and then all these big moments are very sports entertainment-esque, such as bringing in Shaq to something.
I think it was Cody who made that statement. I think he probably shouldn't have made that statement.
Possibly.
I think they probably would have been better off and I believe this is what Tony Khan wanted to do. He wanted to basically make a good version of WCW Monday Nitro, basically 95 to 97 Nitro,
Sure.
along with 1980s Mid-South Wrestling, the territory Bill Watts used to run. I think that's what the goal was. And those weren't just sports based, they had angles, they were sports entertainment. But I think, because obviously they're still doing the records and such, so there is an element of sports related stuff there.
Which, before we get carried away, I got to point out they're doing a lot of that has influenced. I think MLW has been putting on records on the screen, and they're making it more MMA based presentation. Same thing with ROH. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, they're not copying AEW, but I think they've been influenced. So good on.
They're
AEW
also
doing
doing now, like they do in soccer. AEW is doing this thing where they give you like a color code thing for what the participants are wearing to distinguish them there too. So they do some of the sports stuff.
Yeah,
it's not completely devoid, but I think when Cody said that and he was meaning this, he should have probably specified it was a tiny factor, not the big one. But there were a few things Cody said at the beginning, and I like Cody. He seems like a good dude. Probably should have used different verbiage is all
That's pretty fair.
Say.
Either way, so we come back to Shaq. What has been announced for this week's Dynamite with Shaq?
So Shaq is going to appear with Tony Schiavone. They're going to do an interview. So we have that. We have the Inner Circle potentially breaking up.
Okay.
We have, separate from that, MJF defending the Dynamite Diamond Ring against Orange Cassidy. So what ended up happening last week with that match was, instead of there being a winner, they stopped it at the final two so they could have a singles match this week. That was MJF and Orange Cassidy. So we have that. Abaddon is in action.
Mm-hmm.
FTR is taking on the Varsity Blondes, which is Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison. Lance Archer and the Lucha Brothers are taking on the Butcher, the Blade, and Eddie Kingston, because Pac, I believe, is back in the UK for a few weeks or something.
Okay.
Dustin Rhodes is wrestling 10. The Young Bucks are wrestling the Hybrid 2, which is obviously what I'm looking forward to the most.
Is that going to be for the tag titles?
If TH2 wins, they get a shot. This is where the sports presentation comes in. They aren't ranked, so the Young Bucks don't want to give them a title shot unless they can prove worthy. So I would have had the same reaction you did at first there too if they hadn't had that explanation.
That's one trope that WWE really has buried and beaten like a dead horse, is that, especially in the tag division, you beat the tag champions, you get a title shot the next week or the next pay-per-view. It's been poor. Sorry, keep going with your AEW rundown.
Yeah, but that with the rankings, that makes this one a little bit better.
I like that,
and then the final thing is, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. One of the final things is Schiavone, busy man on this show, will be interviewing Sting. That's right, people. Sting is here. And if I can invoke Schiavone. And then, while it hasn't been announced, we will be hearing from Kenny Omega, the new AEW World Champion, which I believe should segue us into the big topic, which is Kenny Omega is the champion. He was helped by Don Callis. And as such, there now appears to be a working relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling.
It blew my mind when you were telling me about this, because I didn't watch. I was watching NXT that night, and I was trying to not stay away from AEW on purpose, but figured I'd catch it at some point. And you were telling me how big the news was, and I said, all right, just go ahead and spoil it. And you wrote that to me in a text, and I was so baffled. It's one of those things that came out of nowhere, because with AEW, they've talked about working relationships. Obviously, they kind of have one with AAA. They also have been rumored to have some ties with New Japan, not directly, but obviously with Moxley working both promotions. There had to be some connection there. Nobody expected Impact to come out and be the next connection.
You should have seen the look on my face when I saw that final scene. I was speechless.
And as I would say, I'm a WWE fan, but out of all the alternatives, Impact has probably been my favorite over the last 2 years. So this really piqued my interest. I'm going to definitely be tuning into Impact. You're probably going to be watching Impact as this goes on the air. At least I'm
Yeah.
going to be watching Impact at that time. This is pretty massive in news, but a lot of people have been debating how that's going to affect either show. So, what's been your perception so far, judging on what the fan reception has been about this decision to work alongside Impact?
Well, first off, just to piggyback off what you said, just so people know for sure,
Sure.
Kenny Omega is going to be on Impact tonight,
Correct.
which is why you and I are very interested in watching this show live. We're not sure what is going to happen, what him and Callis are going to do, but they are both going to be on, and there's going to be some explanation of some sorts.
Okay.
And I'm struggling with words here. This is very exciting. Initially, the reaction was very polarizing, at least I thought from, my interactions with people that I know.
Right.
Since then, it seems to be, I wouldn't say universally, but heavily positive, which surprised me because the initial reaction was, oh, why are they partnering with TNA? The stink of TNA on AEW. Oh, why are they getting involved with this promotion? But then you look across the board away from your bubble, and a lot of people were like, oh man, think of all the matchups this could create, think of all the stuff they can do and everything. To me, I'm kind of in the middle on it until we see more.
Of course.
Obviously, look, I think you and I both agree here. This is tremendous for Impact. Tremendous for Impact.
100%.
This is huge for them. AEW, regardless of whether you're a fan of the style or fan of the stories or not, you can't deny it's one of the hot promotions right now.
Of course.
It's pretty much the darling of the hardcore fans. It's a growing fan base. Everybody is into it. So Impact being involved with these guys is great for them. Great. So they benefit massively. Their website crashed last week after this announcement.
Nice.
They're going to have the highest ratings they've ever had tonight for sure.
It's weird because on one of the websites, I noticed that they were in the top 150 of the night for the first time in, I don't know, months or years. And this is before we saw what happened on Wednesday
before
night.
we knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we knew. And now it's going to be even bigger. So from their standpoint, I totally get it. A lot of people were like, what does AEW get out of it? And honestly, for right now, yeah. And that's why I'm in the middle on it. I don't really see the huge benefit for them. They obviously Impact is smaller than them, so they're not gaining something from that and such. So I understand that standpoint. Having said that, I don't see it as being a detriment either. And a lot of people did because, they're so much lower. Why are they sinking to Impact's level? I mean, let's be real. AEW is working with AAA. They're working with the NWA. They have a loose association with DDT. I love AAA. There is no universe where AAA is on the same level as AEW right now. Zero. In the States, at least. In Mexico, sure. But in the States, no. DDT, no. The NWA, massive no. And nobody was complaining about Thunder Rosa when she showed up there and such. So I don't think this hurts AEW at all. I don't know if it helps them, but it doesn't hurt either. So to me, it's a low risk, probably low reward scenario. I don't think it's going to make or break the promotion either way, but it could produce some really entertaining matches. It could produce some interesting storyline possibilities. It could produce some really good TV. And that is the most important thing as AEW grows. You can't grow your show without good TV. That is a universal fact right there.
I think we're seeing that with Raw.
Well, besides Raw, but Raw isn't growing these days.
Well, because
of that, yeah. So if this is going to help produce great TV, I'm all for it. If it's going to produce bad TV, I'm going to be less for it. That's pretty much my perspective.
And the good thing about AEW is whether you're a fan or not, they are very smart with their decision making. So if this does start to look like it's not producing what they want, they can cut ties, they can change it up, and they are going to be willing to do that. They're not going to be almost like a McMahon-esque and just be headstrong and refuse to listen to the negativity about it. They will make some changes. So I'll give them respect on that. For the potential benefit, though, the first thing you and I discussed that gave them AEW a big boost is the women's division.
Yes.
We mentioned right away, within an hour, you were telling me about this, and we were trying to think of what the ideas were, that how could this benefit AEW? And then I realized that Knockouts division is already, in my opinion, 2 or 3 times as strong as the AEW division. I'm not saying there's no potential, but Sheeta's not that well known. She's definitely an amazing talent, but she's still growing her name value in North America.
Just like the division is growing its name value too. They have improved greatly in the last few weeks. But you're correct. I'll let you finish now.
Yeah, Britt Baker has definitely been a character that they've been working on. It didn't work out well, but you knew that there was something there, and they finally got it right with this heel gimmick. It's working out really well for her. But other than the NWA acquisitions, there wasn't a lot that they could really depend on. They're building up Abaddon, and they do have talents like Tay Conti and Anna Jay, but they're not ready yet. Big Swole, there's
not
potential,
ready yet.
but definitely not ready yet. But if you're now going to doesn't matter, let's even take the lowest ranked wrestler in the Impact Women's or Knockout division, someone like Madison Rayne, who is basically very played out. She's going to be interesting because she's a veteran. And even if she is to put over someone like Anna Jay, if they do have that sort of relationship, that's going to work really well for AEW over time. Plus, you're going to have the big names like possibly Taya Valkyrie. We don't know what her contract status is right now. We know that's up in the air, but still potential. Jordan Grace. I will say this on a weekly basis, but Jordan Grace is going to be the hottest signing whenever Impact contract is up, whether it's going to be AEW, and that looks like a big possibility now, or if WWE does want to raise the stakes. She is going to be huge in women's wrestling over the next 10 years. That is the biggest one, in my opinion. And there's so many others in the Knockouts division. AEW is going to benefit greatly from NWA, with Thunder Rosa, obviously Allison Kay showing up. I know she's technically a free agent, but that's where she made her name, other than being Sienna, in TNA. And then obviously we've also mentioned Serena Deeb a couple of times over the last few weeks. So that women's division just grew exponentially in this one decision.
See, this is a big benefit for both of them, because now if you're a talent and Impact and AEW are working together, and especially if it's especially great for Impact, because now instead of losing all these people and such, suddenly you could go, well, if you stay here, you could get into AEW too. This is like what Conan used to promise the luchadors in the 90s with WCW. You work here, the door's open for you to get to AEW. Now in Ethan Page, for example, if you look on the men's side of things, instead of signing with AEW next month, which we both believed he was going to do, he can do both. He can stay with Impact and he can go to AEW, and he can go with Alexander now instead of waiting there. Jordan Grace can do the same thing. Taya can do the same thing. It's a big bargaining chip for both Impact and AEW to potentially keep her away from WWE if she was so inclined to go there. That is a factor that benefits both sides greatly. But yes, the women's division and the AEW tag division, which does not need help, mind you, are going to benefit greatly here, because AEW can use people like Taya, Jordan Grace, Kimberly, Deonna Purrazzo.
Yeah.
Big right there. They can bring Kiera Hogan. They can bring talent like them in. They now have access to the North, the Motor City Machine Guns, and the Young Bucks are dying to work with Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin yet again. And perhaps most importantly, everybody's favorite carnies, Gallows and Anderson. The Bullet Club reunion gets one step closer to happening. I think it's very possible now, because they did not reveal who attacked Moxley, that it's probably those two, given what Omega did last week.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential there. And then speaking of the men's division, something that we were discussing quickly last week is, if Omega wins, who's going to be the next feud? Because there doesn't seem to be a lot. Well, now that if you add the Impact roster, that doubles your potential over the next couple of months, we'll say. Because AEW has talent for days. It's not like they're struggling to put on a pay-per-view caliber main event at any time. But there was some freshness issues because a lot of people lost to Moxley over the last year, or 9 months that he was champion, and we didn't really know if they were just going to repeat that. Well, now if you have the influx of whether it's an Eric Young, a Rich Swann, or anyone else in the Impact main event, well, you can sell pay-per-views over the next year until someone like Archer is rebuilt. Not that he needs a lot of building, but he's no longer the guy that already lost his world title shot. He can now be a fresh challenger.
Could you imagine Jon Moxley and Eric Young in a program together?
Let's add Sami Callihan into that.
You want to add Sami Callihan into? Sami can wait his turn. I want to have Eric Young and Jon Moxley cutting promos on each other.
I definitely prefer Eric Young over Sami Callihan. I was going by your preference. I know you like Sami.
Oh, well, I think very highly of Sam. I would have no problem with either or. I think the Callihan one would probably be most likely, given him and Mox's connections,
right?
Their past connections. I believe they are still very good friends. I think that would probably be the more fitting, but Eric Young and Jon Moxley cutting promos on each other, Eric Young's character work since he came back to Impact, I think that would appeal to the wider audience more, because Callihan is a polarizing guy. Eric Young, I believe everybody likes him. I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about him.
Oh, except someone in WWE, apparently.
Well, yeah, but they don't like a lot of people there.
Yeah. No, it's definitely intriguing. When you discuss the positives for AEW, it's debatable if it'll work out, but the amount of potential with all these possibilities is incredible. And I think a lot of people will assume that it's just automatically going to be a 50-50 deal. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to 50-50 like that. I think it's going to be very similar to how WCW handled their talent relations, whether it was with Japan, where they would bring in someone. Your WCW much more than I did, but they would bring in the Great Muta for a program. He wasn't a WCW talent, but at the same time, he wasn't just there for 1 week. He would work a couple of weeks or months in a row and then go back to Japan. I think that's a lot closer to what we're going to see here in AEW. Similar again as well to the Luchadors when WCW was tied in with Conan. You would have the regular weekly people that they would bank some money on, but every once in a while you'd have people that would show up for a couple weeks at a time, couple of months, and then they'd probably go back to Mexico. I think you're going to see a lot of that with Impact and AEW.
Well, that would be the right template. I mean, WCW, the NWO obviously wasn't a cross-promotion thing, but it was an invasion angle, and that's the best invasion angle ever, because WCW, unlike every other promotion ever, allowed themselves to look weak in order to build up the heels. Of course, they let themselves look too weak for too long, and it killed the company, but they had the right idea to begin with. To me, now, and I do want to preface this, we don't know how long or deep this alliance is. There have been some indications that this is potentially going to be a one-off, that it's more of a way to get the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson, into AEW for a few dates, that it's more to get Callis into AEW full-time because his contract is coming up or something with Impact. So I have my doubts on that, because everybody else seems to think that this is going to be a more long-term, at least longer than a few weeks, partnership. But just to throw that out there, if it is going to be a longer partnership, if it's me, the way around doing a big cross-promotional Impact AEW match where somebody has to lose and you're going to have the politicking and everything, you do, because this is what the Omega heel turn gives you. You put him with Gallows and Anderson, you get two more guys. Maybe the Young Bucks turn heel. Maybe they put 2 other random guys in there. I don't know. But you do 5 guys there, and then you do a joint AEW Impact team, and you build to a big match like that. And then both AEW and Impact win, and everybody is happy.
You know how much that reminds me of the WCW invasion on WWE, right? Like the Alliance was a combination against WWF at the time.
Yeah, but in this case, instead of the Alliance being heels and losing, the Alliance here would be the good guys, and the Bullet Club would be Omega is a heel now,
right?
Full blown heel. You know, with Callis as his manager or whatever he is, his advocate, I don't know. So he's a heel. You can make Gallows and Anderson the heel. You could the Bullet Club was a heel faction. You could turn those guys, make them this heel group that is trying to take over both promotions, and then AEW and Impact have to team up to counteract them. And that way, instead of a politically volatile situation where somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, people are going to be unhappy. And obviously, I think in that situation, Impact would be the one unhappy.
Yeah.
Because there's no way AEW would lose that.
No.
This way, they both win. You give them a common enemy to team up against. You build towards blood and guts, because this is the perfect scenario for a blood and guts match. Okay. And they vanquish the evil team. And then Omega afterwards can go out on his own or with Callis, or the group could stay together if they want, and the faction could stay together if they want, and you can eventually build to Kenny and the Hangman, or Kenny versus whoever, for when you're ready to take the belt off Omega.
Definitely a lot of potential there. It's kind of strange to think about how it really came out of nowhere. I know I said that earlier, but that is really what I keep coming back to. There is no indication of this. I know Don Callis was on the pay-per-view recently, so I guess that should have been a hint, but you still wouldn't have thought, oh, they're teaming up with Impact. It's just, oh, that's nice that they gave Impact a rub and let Callis be on there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And then it built up into this. So much potential. Wow. It's kind of, I'm a huge Impact fan, and I really can't wait to see Impact tonight more than ever, because I want to see where this goes for AEW, despite the fact that I'm not an AEW fan. Go ahead.
I want to ask you this before we move on to Sting here, because some people did float this idea by me. Obviously, Omega is the AEW World Champion.
Right.
He is the AAA Mega Champion. We'll talk about that more later. It has been suggested to me that maybe a good idea would to also put the Impact title on him, and then make him this dominant final boss of all 3 promotions, who a hero from all 3 has to eventually slay. What would you think of that?
I'd be for it, because personally, while I like Rich Swann, and I love the story of him winning the title, I think it's very much like the Kofi Kingston push in WWE, where we don't know. I don't think it has legs. You know, the reaching the title was really the peak, and I don't know how well it's going to work with him as champion. So him losing to someone like an Omega would be a very credible way where it doesn't come off like what they did in WWF with Kofi, and it's just Brock Lesnar being Brock Lesnar again, and Kofi's back down to the mid-card. I think Omega is such a huge outside of a Impact name where he could lose credibly and not lose any momentum or credibility in, singles action.
Right, and the match quality, especially Swann and Omega, my goodness, that would people would be drooling all over themselves for that one. I don't know who they would put over Omega in Impact, although I get, I do hear Trey Miguel is available again.
Yeah, we don't know where he's signing yet, because the other 2 already signed with NXT. I think some name that I realize I haven't seen on Impact for a while that I think has huge potential, Ace Austin, is someone that I've been expecting a lot from.
If you turn Ace Austin face, if you could figure out how to do that and put him over. See, now I really like this idea, because you can use Omega, because he's gonna benefit greatly from all of this.
For sure.
Here too. That may be where AEW benefits the most, because Omega, just by appearing everywhere, is gonna become a bigger star. So if you put all these belts on him and make him the biggest possible heel, biggest star you can.
The Ultimo Dragon of 2020 or 2021.
And then eventually you have an up-and-coming young guy like an Ace Austin, like a Hangman Page, like a Hijo del Vikingo in AAA. They come in and they slay the dragon and they win the title. You make those guys instantly.
Absolutely.
I like this. I've talked myself into this idea here.
Well, I'm glad you're sold on that, because one thing I'm not sold on, you already mentioned, Sting in AEW. Tell me.
Sting!
Yeah. Look, I like Sting. I'm not going to be crapping on Sting. I fail to see what value he brings at, is it 58 and 60 years old?
61.
61.
You gave him 3 extra years. He'll be very happy with you when he watches the show.
Very good talent. This is not ruining his credibility and his history. And we saw what he was doing in TNA out of all promotions. It's kind of weird to be discussing this with Impact now. He was great, even though it was the minor leagues at the time. He was doing great stuff in TNA. His WWE stuff, it showed his age, plus it was poorly booked for so many reasons. But at the end of the day, even his best work was, okay, it's cool for a nostalgia act, but I wouldn't want to see him do anything more than, a Triple H match. Even the Seth Rollins match, when they announced that, it came out of nowhere. Why would he suddenly be the number one contender when he lost the one match we already saw him in?
Oh, God, yeah.
It was just bad all around. And I think we saw that he can't keep up. Forgetting the injury in that match, because that's just an outside factor. In this case, it just wasn't that great of a match, because it's just two different mentalities and definitely an age difference, a gap of talent. Not in terms of physical ability, because we know Sting could go when he was younger, but at 61 years old, is he going to be able to keep up with anyone in AEW?
Yeah, well, the one thing I will say in Sting's defense on that Rollins match, and it's been a few years since I've seen it, that was one of the last few matches I did see, because Sting, I did think he looked all right in that match up until the injury. And I don't think I'm alone in that opinion. Most people I've seen this week thought, that was a pretty good match up until the buckle bomb. But, that's everybody has a different opinion there. I mean, there's several ways to look at this. I mean, we start with the moment itself. The moment itself was tremendous for somebody like me, especially. I grew up a WCW fan. I grew up with Sting. The Crow Sting angle is the defining angle, my favorite angle of all time, right up until Eric Bischoff and Hollywood Hogan had to ruin everything. But that's a story for another time. Getting hot here. So him coming out on TNT for the first time since 2001, because remember, him and Ric Flair closed out Nitro, having the same match they had for the past 30 years or so. But nevertheless, they closed out Nitro, and now he's back. Tony Schiavone is on the call going, "It's Sting!" Like he used to do when he was coming down the rafters. He's got the ball bat. He does look good for his age. The face paint, you need to get the face paint, older wrestlers. It shaves 10 years off you, will extend your career.
Agreed.
He looks good. The stare down with Arn Anderson, for anybody who watched WCW, was awesome, knows their history. The history between him and the Rhodes family, that was cool. Darby Allin and Sting have similarities. That was cool. So at least for that, and also between the music and, the snow coming down, they had fake snow falling on Sting as they
do Jacksonville, Florida? You think the snow is fake, really?
It was fake. Jacksonville is not known for their snowy winters, or so I hear.
I see.
So that was really cool. I have no idea what to think going forward. I have the same concerns you do. He is 61 years old. I would not be putting him in the ring.
No.
At all. No, I would not.
You're saying he faced off with Darby Allin. Would that mean taking him under his wing, or would that lead to a match? Because that is not that Darby's dangerous. I don't want to get that wrong, but his style is very reckless to himself.
Well, Darby is very dangerous to himself, not anybody else, really. Yeah.
It still feels weird to put, someone 61 who had to retire. I don't know how permanent that is now, but retired due to the injury and couldn't get cleared by WWE doctors. Suddenly at 61, getting into AEW, taking on Darby Allin of all people, just seems like a recipe for disaster.
I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, that would be too fast for him. And AEW, I mean, well, I don't know what they're going to do with him, but they've proven that they're smart enough to know that there's some things here that Sting won't be able to do. So I don't think they're going to be putting him against
Sting
Ray Phoenix
or I was going to say the Young Bucks, but yeah, Ray Phoenix, that's a good one.
Or anything like that. I think there are ways to use him in a wrestling capacity. And the fact is, he does want to wrestle. He does not like how it ended with that Seth Rollins match. He does believe he can have one more match. He obviously wanted that match with Undertaker, which, I mean, in some ways, thank goodness that didn't happen, because that probably would have been no good. But I do think he could have a match with Cody if needs be. Cody would be able to work that style. And it's almost destiny. You have to imagine Cody Rhodes grew up going, I have to be the next guy that betrays Sting. It's got to be me, man. So you have to think that he's in the back of his mind thinking about that. They could do a cinematic match would probably be the best course for Sting, in my opinion, at least, because that would be able to hide a lot of the negatives. Sure. It does fit his character. I do think you could probably get away with that. But having said that, you could do that. You could do a match with Cody or maybe somebody else who works that older American style. But overall, to me, the best way to use him would be for him to just be stalking the rafters, stalking the higher up areas of the arena, pointing the bat, being the silent, less is more babyface that he was so great at back in his day. Mm-hmm. And I think if you do that, you've got something. I also think because of his age, and because he can't really do much, but they want to use him a lot to justify what they're paying him and for him to appear every week, there is a chance that this could go way off the rails here.
It's hard for me to get excited about anything with Sting. Now, first off, I was the WWF kid, so when WCW was becoming the big thing up in Canada, Sting was not the main factor yet. It was obviously the NWO, and it took over a year until Sting became the big factor.
Right.
So his aura is all in basically replays for me. I never got to see Sting live and make a big impact. I understand his value. I'm not trying to discredit him in any way, but I don't think there's been a lot since then. I liked his TNA stuff, but it wasn't, it wasn't a draw for me. I didn't tune into TNA to catch Sting. I caught TNA, and Sting was part of it, and he was a good part of it. So yeah. I failed to see his draw in 2020 at 61 years old, even in AEW. The one match that I think could go well, you mentioned Cody, and you're absolutely right with that one. It's not a draw. It just seems like the safest match to go. Dustin against Sting would be pretty interesting.
Oh, yes.
You get that veteran old guys that probably should retire, whether not that because they don't deserve it, because Dustin's still amazing. I'm not saying he should retire, but he planned on retiring until having that one match with Cody. And Sting, we thought he retired forcibly, but still we thought he retired 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know. I'm curious, but it's not the sort of angle where it's going to make me think I got to tune in to AEW to catch what's going on, because Sting is a non-wrestler. I don't think he's going to be a regular competitor, obviously. I doubt it's going to be more than a handful of matches a year. And it's the same reason why I didn't care about Edge coming back at the Royal Rumble. Sure, it's a great moment. It was an amazing moment. It's one of those moments that I still go on to the network to watch over and over again. But I haven't done that with any of Edge's matches since then, because at that age, it's just not the same.
Right. Well, yeah, I think there's a very good chance that becomes the same situation here, because this moment is going to live on one way or the other, regardless of what happens, because you're going to have Shivani doing the same call he did in the 90s. It's Sting on TNT. Obviously, the significance of that, we all know it's huge. It's huge.
I don't know if it's huge to the people that matter. Basically, it's going to be huge to 35-year-old fans. I'm not saying that's your exact age, but around that age group. Whereas I don't know if newer fans are going to care. My 15-year-old nephew who thinks AEW is kind of cool is not going to give two craps about Sting
Well,
and Shivani.
the one thing is, after his debut, they put his T-shirts up for sale on Pro Wrestling Tees, and it was in 24 hours. It was one of the highest selling shirt in 24 hours in history of that site. It's already one of the top selling merchandise items of this year and of all time, I believe, and it hasn't even been a week. And I mean, this has been a debate with Sting for forever because a lot of people have gone, well, yeah, he was a big star, but was he really that big of a star? Because he never drew as much as Flair or all these other guys and stuff. That debate has gone on since I've been alive, pretty much.
Well, they do that in all promotions, whether it's Bret Hart and Shawn against,
well, yeah, Shawn especially, yeah. Those guys, yeah, those three, because they came after the guys like Flair and Hogan and such, especially get scrutinized. But and all three of them never really had the same level of booking that Hogan and Flair did either, which is why goodness, Sting half the time was buddying around with RoboCop. He was feuding with that Black Scorpion guy. The biggest momentum he ever had was as the Crow Sting. And as we touched on earlier, instead of beating Hogan clean, which my goodness would have made him right there with Sting, would have been Steve Austin and Sting going into 1998. And instead, they do the worst finish in the history of pro wrestling, and he never recovered from it. So in some ways, it's almost, and Shawn and Bret had those moments too, even if I can't remember them off the top of my head. So in some ways, we don't know how big these guys could have been because they never got the biggest shake. What do you want to say here?
WrestleMania 9, when Bret walked in as champion, lost to Yokozuna, and then let Hogan go in and beat Yokozuna for him to win the title in less than a minute.
Yeah, I'm starting to sense a recurring theme here.
Yeah,
and it involves a man named Hulk Hogan.
It's politics of wrestling.
Recurring theme with people being held down. But here's the thing. Those three guys, they maybe never fulfilled their full potential for booking reasons and whatnot, but they're all still like huge these days. Bret and Shawn are beloved legends. Sting, like if Sting was Bobby Eaton, who was a great worker, for example, he's not getting that pop last week. No, he's getting that pop because he's Sting.
And I think the name, the marketing around Sting, that's one thing I think WCW did well, but still dropped the ball on, was that, having more of those masks. Just imagine if Vince McMahon had his hands on 1997 Sting. The money he would have made off that gimmick would have been massive.
If Vince had promoted 1997 Sting and Eric Bischoff had booked 1997 Sting, there would be statues of him across America right now.
Yeah. And which is weird to say because Vince McMahon's not the most respected booker today, but back in 97.
Well, that's why he would have done the promoting. Bischoff would have handled the angle, and then that was the big thing with WCW and WWF in the 90s. WWF had the great main event scene. WCW had the great undercard. If you put the two together, you'd have had the greatest promotion of all time.
And then the star power of the NWO.
Yeah.
I said NWA accidentally, but the NWO. They had a lot going for it, but let's not go too far in the past. We will definitely cover that more in the future. So we got Sting. We've got Omega on Impact. Is there anything else major going on in the world of AEW and Dynamite? Is there something massive on Dark that's happening while Omega's on Impact?
I mean, Shauna and Ivelisse will both be on Dark tonight, but that's only important to me, you see.
Well, look, we talk about the struggling women's division. Ivelisse is one name we forgot to mention as already part of it. That could be more. Shauna is, I don't know if she's young, but she's less known than most of the other names, but with a lot of potential also. So that's a good name to build up your roster over time, but definitely not the draw that Omega on Impact would be.
No, Omega on Impact is going to be the talk of the town in a few hours from now, or if you're watching this at 8:39 p.m., the talk of the town currently.
Yeah,
So
correct.
yes.
So, wanted to switch gears to the other big show or big news this week. The competition to Dynamite is NXT, who basically put on a very average show against the Winter is Coming Dynamite, but then put on one of their, I guess, the WrestleMania of their takeovers with the War Games show this past weekend. Before I get into too much of the detail, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what is it about modern wrestling that I personally don't like?
An abundance of spots for no reason.
So what do you think I thought about War Games?
I am anticipating that you were very high on the Io Shirai Great Sasuke trash can spot.
I appreciate it for what they are, but I think this is the wrestling that's passed me by.
Oh man,
they're fine. They were fun matches, but when I see 8.5, out of 10 reviews or 4-star review match reviews, I just can't agree. They're fun, but they're entirely forgettable.
Were there a lot of people were there a lot of people that high on this show? Because I've got to tell you, the reaction I've heard was that this was one of the lesser takeovers overall.
I don't go to as many sites as you do, but the one that I do visit more often was reviewing it really well. I saw an 8.5 show review and some positive overall opinions, but I think that this is the modern wrestling fan style. I prefer having some my match of the night, for example, was Thatcher against Ciampa. I love that match, but it was an old school. No one went to the top rope. There was no spots. There were planned sections, so I guess there were technically spots, but it was just planned wrestling, sort of like Steamboat Savage WrestleMania 3. A lot of it was planned, but none of it was a spot. That's what I got out of it. Whereas War Games, yeah, it was okay. The trash can stuff, I shook my head at. That was absolutely... I respect the showmanship of it all, but if I was in a fight, I would never, ever do any of these things. And that, I think overall between the two War Games matches, I preferred the women's match, but it also had the worst weakness out of the two matches, where it had the really dumb hammer. I don't know if you read about that, but
no,
they threw in a toolbox and they opened up like a sledgehammer, but just like a pocket-sized sledgehammer. And Rhea hit, I think it was Dakota Kai in the back with it, or it might have been vice versa. That would end a match. I don't care if it's just a hammer, regular hammer. You hit someone in the spine with a hammer, they're not going to keep wrestling, never mind in a cage match for another 20 minutes.
Why do I remember that? Didn't that get like Seth or Bray? Didn't that end a Hell in a Cell match once by DQ?
That was a giant mallet, like the length of a hockey stick. This was a foot long, and you could tell it was like Spirit Halloween quality. It was rubber as rubber can be. It really was the weakest part of the whole night.
See, so the biggest problem I heard with the women's match was that inexplicably, and I couldn't believe it when Impact used to do this. I couldn't believe WWE did this. They gave the faces the woman advantage.
I was a fan of that. Because it created a change, and the match itself worked out well with that gimmick. I know there was a lot of discussions on some of the other sites I visit where they were saying, I don't get it, why? And I agree, that seemed out of nowhere, but like I usually do, well, let's see how it plays out. And they played it out really well, where when the women were about to have the advantage, they used it as a chance to keep them out. The heels got some heat from that. And this big match was basically turning into the Raquel Gonzalez push. She ended up being the made star out of this match. And a lot of that was because of the way she was handling that one woman advantage that the baby faces had. It was maybe more subtle than what we're used to, especially in WWE, but it worked out well. It was confusing as a decision. They worked it really well into the match.
Now, I would probably have to see it, but just on the surface, for me, that just, you never do that. And especially because the heels won.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a fan that missed the show and don't have time to go back and watch it, and you hear the baby faces got the advantage and then they lost, they look like absolute chumps.
Or it makes the heels look even more dominant. And that's the impact that I got out of it, was Raquel Gonzalez looked like the next number one contender, out of this match, which is not what we expected. I don't know if we discussed it on the air, but I figured when
No.
they turned Toni Storm heel, she was going to be the next challenger to Io Shirai. Now it's going to be Raquel Gonzalez, in my opinion.
Well, probably is. And the other thing too, like some of this stuff, because Candice LeRae, who I'm a big fan of, we both are.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, she broke her arm in this match, and we talked about all the dangerous stunts they did in these matches. I mean, the Io Shirai trash can over her head jumping off the cage. I mean, yeah, it's a cool visual. If that goes wrong, it's disastrous, right there. Like great Sasuke, who's a legend in Japan, and he worked WWE back in the 90s a little bit. He does this stunt with the barrel all the time, similar to what she did. Okay. And it's a miracle how that 50-year-old man lives each time he does it. So, like,
I can only credit it to planning, but in the end, it looks overly planned. I hate that spot where someone's about to jump and everyone's just piling around underneath. Oh my, what are we going to do?
It's not so much that for me. That doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you. To me, it's just at some point, it's completely like a lot of the problems people had with this show was that a lot of it was just unnecessary. The War Games matches were unnecessarily long. Mm-hmm. They featured too many spots that you did not need to do, especially with no crowd. Frankly, did we need 2 of these matches to begin with?
No.
Because War Games is supposed to be special. It's supposed to be these big feuds that have been built up for a long, long time, and neither one of them had really been built up all that long. So I think the problem is people thought that the effort from the wrestlers on the show was completely outstanding.
Correct.
But the booking and the thought process behind a lot of the stuff and the over-reliance on things that they didn't need to do made it far weaker than we're used to with TakeOver. And let's be real, we're not used to weaker TakeOver, because nobody's thought the show was bad. We're not used to weaker takeovers. TakeOver is supposed to be like a Wrestle Kingdom. It's supposed to be the best thing every time out.
It definitely had a lesser feeling for me, but that's the type of wrestling I'm not into. So whether it's a Johnny Gargano main event or a War Games with freaking Adam Cole involved, I don't expect to love it in general. But this disappointed me. I think when I say I cared more about, or I enjoyed the women's more, I think it's more because I cared about the participants more. I like all 8 of these women on some level. I think there's a lot of potential, and I like a lot of the stories, but you're absolutely right. There was no heat to build up this 4-on-4 massive cage match. Same with the men. There's a lot of potential for the Undisputed Era and the Kings of Wrestling, or whatever they're, the McAfee group. But to have it be in War Games out from their first match against each other, it's forcing it, and that's something that WWE's been doing for years.
Yeah.
Whether it's Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber, it's something that can mean something, but now that they plan it for this month every year, oh, well, I guess we better build up a match to it, but it doesn't have the drama.
It's exactly like you just said. TLC and Hell in a Cell and ladder matches used to be special. And now they do it once every year, and they don't even do that. They do it multiple times every year.
They won one event of nothing but ladder matches, but then, what was it, 2 NXTs in a row to try to crown who was going to be the advantage of the
which is
takeover?
Just such lazy booking. It's so lazy. And now they're doing the same thing. Like War Games, when it first came back, it was special. Now by the time next year comes around, it's going to be, the match will probably be good, but
who cares?
They do this all the time. Yeah. Why not save it until you absolutely need it? This would be like if AEW had done Blood and Guts, just randomly out of the blue and such. They lose its meaning, but instead they held off on it, and now
it'll probably mean more once they do it.
Right, exactly. So that's WWE for you there.
And I was going to say, it's a lot like Survivor Series, that it used to mean something in the calendar year, not because there was a lot of angles going on for Survivor Series originally. I'm talking about the 80s here. it was just, oh, we don't get a lot of pay-per-views, and now they're going to do this special show. I'm going to pay attention. But then Survivor Series didn't feel so special once there was also King of the Ring, and they also had SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble became the second biggest show very quickly. So they had to make the stakes matter of that show, and that's another thing that they didn't do. No matter who won War Games, nothing really changes. You know,
No.
there was no. Not that you can have a lot of stakes in a 4-on-4 cage match, but there was nothing. At least a couple of years, we've mentioned this a couple of times when we talked about Survivor Series, the winners of the match got some prizes when they returned to Raw the next night when they won whatever it was that they won. They had none of that. It was spots for spots. It was an excessive in all realms. You're absolutely right. When people are saying it was too long, I don't mind long matches, but when you feel like it's long just for the sake of having a long match, it just doesn't, it feels empty.
Exactly.
So it was okay. I didn't dislike it, but a lot like the Johnny Takeover main events or Adam Cole main events, I doubt I'm ever going to put them back on the network unless I'm just being a completist and I need to watch every Takeover. I'm going to skip to this one for sure.
Right. So what do they have planned for this week on Wednesday?
The only thing they've really announced is that Finn Balor is going to appear. They had a hint that Karrion Kross might be coming back. They didn't really outright say it, but they had a pretty obvious promo saying Apocalypse or Countdown is coming, and it was all the same imagery that we saw from his debut. So the biggest news is that he's going to come and challenge for his NXT title again from Finn Balor. Nothing else has been mentioned that I know.
Boy, they're really trying to give AEW another shot at $1 million.
Well, in general, the fact that they didn't do it with Winter is Coming is shocking.
No, but now they're going to have Sting speaking. People are going to know Sting's going to be on. The fallout of this Omega thing and Shaq.
Well, absolutely. But and this is something you and I talked about when we were saying how they didn't book a tag team title match. And like, yeah, but they're saving that for the next week because they'll draw you in with this Winter is Coming and tell you what's happening the next week. Oh, you know what? I'm going to tune in again. I don't think it's going to be near the same number this week, but it's still going to beat NXT hands down. I think NXT is counting on the fallout of War Games in general to get interest, but when AEW is on, it might not be my thing, but there's no denying they're the hot promotion like you were saying. It's going to need more than just saying, hey, we did War Games last week. Why don't you watch our show?
Right, and the problem too is, you know, AEW had a big show last week too, and even though NXT happened days later, the AEW show is still the bigger show of the two, I would say.
It was a huge show for NXT, but nothing came out of it that made you want to tune
in. Exactly. And AEW, we had two things at least.
And then they announced the Shaq thing, what might not matter to me, but that's still something that people are going to pay attention to.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So to finish things off, I wanted to just mention we were excited for NWA, and that kind of went to crap because it was just recaps of the United Wrestling Network shows that we've been seeing. I did not expect that, sadly.
Wow.
And nothing else is really of interest in WWE land. TLC is feeling like a very middle-of-the-road pay-per-view, nothing too special.
We're talking about excess in matches. I believe I've heard there's at least, 2 or 3 TLC matches on this show?
I know there's 2 of them, and they're 2 matches that they're beginning the feuds. AJ Styles and Drew McIntyre. Such a blood feud that one is. There is history between Owens and Roman, but they haven't really capitalized on that, so it feels like, again, the first match of a new feud.
But at least in that match with Drew and AJ, the lack of stakes and blood feud there is going to hurt that. Owens will at least kill himself for that Roman match. So.
And Roman is still the hottest act in WWE.
Exactly.
So if you're going to add stakes like that, okay, it makes sense to make it Roman Reigns. But
you don't need more than one. AJ and Drew could have just been a regular match.
It'll be fine, but it's a lot like War Games where it feels forced. The match quality will be, very good probably, but I don't care about the drama so far. They can turn things around, but I'm not expecting it to. What's the big news going on with AAA?
Triple Mania! Triple Mania is upon us. We are, I believe it's 4 days away now. Okay. It is this Saturday, December 12th. It'll be on at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I believe it will be available in the U.S. on Facebook Watch and YouTube. No Twitch. this
Okay.
time. I know people are used to them being on Twitch.
Is Vince McMahon in trouble? Or, no, never mind.
No. Vince cannot shut this down. He has no power over Dorian Roldan and Conan, last I heard. Let me see if I remember all these matches now.
Kenny Omega is the bigger one.
Well, we're going to get to that one. So the opener is going to be Poder del Norte, which is Carta Brava Jr., Mocha Cota Jr., and Tito Santana, not the Tito Santana that you are familiar with, not the Strikeforce guy. And they are taking on Maximo, Mr. Iguana, pretty self-explanatory there, and
Right.
Nino Hamburguesa, who likes hamburgers. So it should be fun. Poder del Norte is a really, really great trio. So that should be a fun opener. Pentagon and Phoenix are on the show. They are defending the AAA tag team titles against Mystices Jr. If you're keeping score at home, I believe that is the fourth incarnation of Sin Cara Mystico, Mystices Caristico. He teams with Octagon Jr., non-Kalisto edition. And there will be another challenging team, which is Rhea Scorpion, who is great, and our dear friend Tejano Jr.
Love you, Tejano.
Big fans. We're big fans, Tejano. So we have
super memorable in Lucha Underground.
Yes, big feuds with the disgraced Alberto El Patron. Yeah. We have a 6-way women's match for the Copa Triple Mania. Chick Tormenta, her first AAA show back. She was pregnant. She had the baby. Mazel tov to her. Fabi Apache, Hades, Lady Shani, Lady Maravilla, and La Hydra are in it. Should be very good.
Right on.
We had originally reported that Taya was going to defend the title on that show, but she has a prior engagement apparently, so she can't be on the show.
Fair enough.
Psycho Clown, Monster Clown, and Murder Clown, Los Psycho Circus, are going to wrestle Blue Demon Jr., El Hijo del LA Park, and because Baby Park is there, that can only mean the big guy is there too. LA Park is the final guy in that match. Obviously, you can never miss anything that man does. The Marvel Showcase match, Arachno and Leyenda Americana, wonder which character they're portraying with that name there.
Right.
Versus Terror Purpura and Venenoid. We do not know who's portraying these roles even now. I believe that'll be known only when the show happens. The main event is going to be Chessman versus Pagano in a hair versus hair match. Lots of hardcore stuff. Probably will be some fire. Maybe someone goes through a shopping cart. Maybe someone goes through glass. Light tubes are probably required. It'll be something. And obviously the big match that everybody outside of Mexico is going to care about the most. Kenny Omega defends the AAA Mega Championship against Laredo Kid in what is definitely now the biggest match of Laredo Kid's life.
So that's not the main event, you said?
Semi-main. The belief is that Pagano and Chessman is going to be bigger for the fans in Mexico.
That makes sense.
Number one, which might be true. I would argue with no fans there that it doesn't really matter who the biggest person is, but I'm just one man. And number two, it is expected that these guys are going to do everything possible to kill each other and may destroy the ring. And if you're going to do that, you might as well put it last so there's nothing else after. So, but obviously for most people, Kenny versus Laredo is going to be the big match. All eyes are on Kenny right now. Thus, all eyes will be on Laredo. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the AAA Mega Championship. Do they keep it on Kenny? Do they take it off him? How good is Laredo in this? Because we know what we're going to get from Kenny. For Laredo, if this match is super great, and I have a feeling it's going to be so, does this then open up doors for him in AEW once again? Does this open up more doors for him in AAA to grow there? Does WWE see this and go suddenly, oh, we need another guy in the Lucha House Party. Let's get Laredo in there.
It's
he could
always
open a lot
hilarious
of
when you
doors
do
for
this.
himself. What?
It's always hilarious when you mock the Lucha House Party and every luchador that goes to WWE.
I do it to stop the tears, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do it to stop. I do it to stop Grand Metalique's tears too.
And Andrade. So
yes, him, but to a lesser extent. Andrade is gonna be married to Charlotte Flair. Does he really have it that bad at the end of the day?
No, probably not. But
no,
he's still been one person that's been off TV since the draft. And he
right,
lost
well,
to
that's
Angel
true.
Garza, who has been off TV since the draft too, or out of the.
Oh, ring. You know what I've heard? They're going to pair Angel Garza with Eva Marie.
So that takes us to the end of this show.
He needs to get out of here right now.
Oh,
he's so embarrassed by that.
For those who don't know, is it Eve or Eva Marie? I can't remember.
Eva Marie.
Eva Marie.
All Read Everything. I remember that.
The All Read Everything, and she's, look, attractive. We're not going to pretend otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's one of those very similar to what we've seen with Lana, where you could tell it's a training on the fly type scenario. Not known for a massive personality, but we know what the assets are. We're not going to pretend otherwise.
Right.
And is such a pet project for WWE that I don't comprehend. I don't know. There's so many women in WWE that are attractive and can work that I don't understand why they will spend this much attention on Lana or Eva Marie, but not on anyone else, honestly.
I mean, goodness, yeah, they got a bunch of people that they could you couldn't use Ruby Riot's a poor example here. She's a punk rocker and she doesn't go with Mr. Suave Angel Garza, but
but you do have Liv Morgan, who's also got. I'm not a huge fan, but she's got potential. Is attractive.
Yeah.
They've been putting attention on her on the network with a recent special.
They could have done Chelsea Green for crying out loud.
She's injured, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
I mean, Matt Cardona would have been unhappy, but let's be real, nobody would have been upset there.
I think he'll be fine.
Yes.
Some other women that are attractive but not being used really well, the Peyton Royce, Lacey Evans. I like Billie Kay, but I know she seems to be the lesser of the iconics.
Yeah, people aren't high on her at all. No.
I enjoy her work, but I think it's all personality. And there's so much potential on so many people of the roster that the idea of getting Eva Marie on TV and throwing her above all these other women for Angel Garza, I could see how it would work together, but I could also see Angel Garza working with any of the women we've mentioned.
You know what would have been a great idea that they could have easily done? They could have just done it with Zelina. It was right there. But instead, she had to use Twitch, and now she's on the internet like the rest of us, and WWE is wondering if they're going to get union threats.
That's really calmed down since that, so I don't think there's going to be too much.
That really has, yeah. Well, what a shock. What a shock, everybody. I can't believe they did this to Zelina. I'm never going to trust WWE again. Oh, wait, SmackDown's on.
War Games this weekend.
War Games, man. War Games.
So thank you very much for joining us. More about the decline of wrestling civilization.
But before we go, I just would like
ahead.
to promote, because I do write in my spare time, as you know. This week, because it is Triple Mania week, I am doing a series of columns called Triple Mania Week because I'm a super creative guy, you see. And right now I've been doing it's now a 4-part. It was originally going to be 3-part, but I'm extending it to 4. History of Triple Mania series. Parts 1 and 2 are available now at luchacentral.com, and part 3 will be available later tonight after I cook dinner, watch Impact, watch AEW Dark, and don't pass out from the pain. And I will have an article on Laredo Kid on Thursday, a preview of Triple Mania on Friday, and a fun Triple Mania Lucha bag, aka mailbag style column on Saturday. So you can check that out only at luchacentral.com. How's that for a plug right there?
Nobody could have done it better. Very good job. Thank you, Cult Icon. I just want to thank our sponsor, Slurm Hand Cream. It is the best hand cream on the market. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Don't ask
Thank
where
you,
it comes
Zoidberg.
From. He's Zoidberg. Don't ask where it comes from. But tune in next week. Subscribe, like, join us all for the podcast here on Lucha Central. I am Joe Martel. He is the cult icon, Eric Mutter. See you again next week. You're not gonna do
Why
your bye
not
thing?
Zoidberg?
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
There you go.